Welcome everybody to today's third capstone research defense. I'm very pleased to be here and to join you on this day as we watch Eiman Abdelrasoul defend her capstone. We'll give you the rules of the road. You have about 25 minutes to complete your presentation. If you're a little bit over, don't stress. I mean, we won't cut you off, but do try to keep it to 25 minutes. After that, we will have 2 rounds of questioning. The first round will be led by your thesis supervisor, Jacquie, Professor Jacquie Hoornweg, and then your second reader, and then the chair of the defense, myself. And after that, we'll do a second round. And if we have time, we'll open it to the audience. And if they have no questions, then we shall take a minute for the defense committee determine a verdict, a score. Then we shall come back and give you the result. So it's 11:33. So let's say it's 11:34. That gives you, in Vancouver anyways, that gives you until 59 to do your presentation. And the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Alex. And good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. My name is Eiman Abdelrasoul. Today, I'll be presenting the findings of my capstone research study titled The Role of Communications in Risk Management, Best Practices for Strategic Reputation Risk Management. This afternoon, I'll take you through the results of my study, which begin with my literature review, followed by the research method, and then I'll take you through my key findings and my key takeaways, including a conceptual reputation risk management framework. As the reputation steward, the CCO plays a pivotal role in the organization. They are the gatekeepers of the organization's core intangible value. The value of reputation surpasses the development of share price, profitability, and return on investment. And a study estimated that reputation's asset value represents 22% of S&P 500's total market capitalization. Edifice, now moving to the lit review, Edifice provides recommendations for excellent PR. It says that it must be empowered through representation in the dominant coalition. It also provides organizations with multiple proactive crisis mitigation practices to maintain on an ongoing pre-crisis basis. The communicator's role in risk management is directly related to many of his duties as a communicator, reputation stewardship, integration within the C-suite, reputation management, especially as a growing number of CEOs require advice on reputational risk. Communications enable the collection, analysis, and dissemination of crisis-related knowledge and provides the foundation for decision-making. The lit review also focused on reputation management and its relationship with crisis mitigation, the stage which this study is focused on. The research found that the importance of reputational risk is rising at an alarming speed, hastened by business trends and technological innovations, and that leading companies treat reputation as strategic that does not require more work, just a shift of focus. 87% of over 300 global executives rated reputational risk as more important or much more important relative to other strategic risks. Yet, reputational risk remains a growing challenge that companies worldwide are still learning to manage. However, despite the CCO being the reputation steward, the literature has a limited focus on their role in reputational risk management. My research problem was how and to what extent can PR practitioners use best practices to enhance their role in strategic risk management. I wanted to explore current practices, existing gaps and challenges, and best practices and frameworks. The research questions were, what is the role of communicators in strategic risk management? How and to what extent can PR add value to strategic management through crisis mitigation or prevention? And how and to what extent can communications use models, emerging technologies, and tools to enhance crisis mitigation? Methodology was 13 in-depth interviews, in-depth review of formal studies related to this study, followed by a content analysis for 18 frameworks. The content analysis was conducted on 18 frameworks, as I mentioned. It was conducted on two levels, manifest and latent level. This sample table is derived from the detailed original table in the research paper, which reflects the manifest analysis level. In general, the frameworks had three overarching purposes: crisis mitigation, reputational risk management, and issues management. These models are mainly derived from two disciplines, communications and business. So the business journals I drove from were like the Corporate Board Journal, Harvard Business Review, and Risk Finance. Let's take the reputation risk audit cycle as an example. It was designed as a tool for assessing a company's reputation risk profile and what puts stakeholder trust at risk. It is grounded in two theories: risk assessments and management, and how reputation is formed. This world cloud was generated from the second level of analysis, the latent analysis. And this level of analysis was crucial to sustain a clear focus on the purpose of this research. So it's focused on the models, components, and principles that assist the CCO in fulfilling their role in crisis mitigation. The analysis was particularly performed from the perspective of reputational risk. Some of these frameworks focused on strategic utilization of assets to protect reputation, while others centered around management angles, such as the role of the board of directors or how organizations can make reputation management as part of their enterprise risk management function. The dominating themes deliberated by these frameworks included governance, strategic orientation, responsibility attribution, and structure. In the cloud, you can also see themes like maturity, measurement, monitoring, audit, strategy, system, expectations, risks, and sources, which were important points of intersection and the content analysis conducted. Now, jumping to the key quotes from the interview results, successful risk management is more likely if the PR leader is at the senior executive level, reports to the CEO, and has at least some engagement with the board of directors. Next, it won't make sense for the CEO to be the lead responsible for every risk. It makes sense for the business leader of each function to be the owner of each risk that aligns with their portfolio. In the same context, the participant said, and I quote, "I think the most impactful thing a CCO can do is argue that reputation is an intangible asset and it needs to be monitored as a standalone risk, not as an outcome of other risks that are poorly managed, and that the CCOs are the best poised to do so." In terms of best practices, another participant said that organizations' mission, vision, values, and purpose should guide the development of principles or guiding principles to ensure consistent risk assessment, consistent response, and consistent outcomes. They said, and I quote, "It is like a roadmap and a decision filter. It helps the organization." So this is not part of the quote. "It helps the organization quickly assess issues and respond consistently." 90% of participants said that awareness and understanding of PRs and the CCO's role are substantial gaps in the CCO's role in risk management. 100% said resources, while 70% said knowledge, capabilities, and skill set. Now moving to the discussion. Over 75% of participants said that the PR leader is a part of the top management table with varying levels of empowerment, and that they contribute a reputational lens to these strategic deliberations, or a reputational risk lens to these deliberations. 80% of participants have or believe they have a formal process to review reputational risk regularly at the strategic level. However, results showed variation regarding reputation risk perception and reputation risk ownership. Only about 15% viewed reputation as a standalone risk and considered it a part of the CCO's portfolio. Now, in terms of environmental scanning, almost 90% of participants use social listening and media monitoring technologies to scan the external environment to identify issues, risks, trends, and themes. Similarly, scholars have considered environmental scanning a primary step in identifying sources of risk and monitoring the conversation surrounding an organization on an ongoing basis. Over 30% of interviewees considered understanding the changing societal expectations to be key to PR's value in crisis mitigation. This was also consistent with the content analysis results, as public perception, understanding, and measurement were critical components of multiple reputational risk management models and principles. 100% of interviewees said PR should be involved in crisis prevention, providing a reputational risk lens to risk management. And that is because, first, PR is a dot connector of risk owners across the organization with a 360-degree oversight across the organization stakeholders. And this is as 50% of participants say. Second, PR is best poised to execute reputational risk management functions, as 75% of participants said PR monitors, identifies, and assesses risks and feeds this intelligence into the risk management function. And this is also consistent with the analyzed models, as they were proactive oriented and structured around risk detection, risk analysis, for knowledge creation and decision making. Sorry, for reputational risk from a reputational risk management perception perspective, the participants' companies had different maturity levels regarding their reputational risk management process. Organizations were at a spectrum from being very tactical to being both strategic and tactical. To better demonstrate this spectrum, the reputational risk maturity model was used to analyze the results, which resulted in snapshots of the participants' company's maturity in some core reputational risk management components. The data shows that 80% of companies monitor reputation health at the management level. Only 50% monitor and measure at both the strategic and operational level. And 10% while 10% were aspirational, the leading 35% use the results that come out of this monitoring and measurement to inform and reassess strategic and operational decision making, including but not limited to communications. Now, moving into other components of the maturity levels, the participant companies were generally more progressive in their reputational risk measurement and monitoring process than their reputational risk governance. Reputational risk monitoring and measurement varied from being from progressing to aspirational, while governance from emerging to progressing. The lack of designated individuals responsible for reputation risk in 90% of participants' companies might explain the disconnect in the reputation monitoring between the strategic and operational level showed in this figure. While less than 10% are established, as the figure shows, they understand the link between reputation and enterprise risk horizontally, across the organization, including the employee level. However, that was done indirectly through the organization's proprietary framework, which integrates risk owners across the organization horizontally and vertically through an integrated issues management framework. The study findings identified a conceptual framework for ongoing strategic reputational risk management. This conceptual framework is constructed from the communicator's perspective and their role in reputational risk management. It is derived from theoretical and empirical best practices and frameworks. First, a second degree of content analysis was conducted to the reputation risk management framework, then best practices from content analysis and interviews, mostly from interview recommendations and most progressive companies' practices. These were identified to form this conceptual framework. The framework was based on the overarching best practice around building the expert organization and crisis mitigation by triangulating sense-making, knowledge creation, and decision-making. It is significantly based on 3 models that were selected because together, combined, they identified the communicator as a critical component of reputational risk management and integrated that into the overall risk management framework. So as you can see, the steps here, starting from risk governance to audit, then risk identification, and ending with risk assessment. We'll explain here and do the rationale and the components. And here I'm just going to take an example, the first step as an example. So the first step, establishing risk governance, which refers to establishing reputational risk culture, integration, and the process that allows for adequate risk assessment and treatment. The content analysis and the best practice from the interviews identified that mature reputation governance requires dedicated people with roles and responsibilities who are accountable for measuring and monitoring reputation at the strategic and the operational levels. Step number 2, the auditing. So just high level, I'm going to take check on the other steps. Step number 2 is auditing, which includes measuring reputation health and periodic auditing for the reputational risk management structure or the governing bodies. This was also derived from the best practices from content analysis and the interviews around the importance of benchmarking reputation and ensuring robust, effective reputational risk management function. Step 3 is risk identification through identifying sources of risk and environmental scanning. Step 4, risk assessment, so measuring, monitoring, and analyzing reputation risk, which leads to forming the course corrective actions, which might be proactive or reactive actions that flow through the governing structure to different organizational levels or units, including the comms unit. Now, the conclusion section, this project provided 7 theoretical and empirical recommendations that aim to enhance the CCO's role in risk management. At the heart of these takeaways is that PR adds value to strategic risk management through strategic reputation risk management. Next, participants' organizations are at different maturity levels regarding reputational risk management, and hence perhaps readiness for that integration with strategic risk management in the organization. This highlights a huge opportunity for areas of improvement, but also challenges, and especially in terms of reputation risk responsibility attribution. The findings really highlighted that the CCO is a key driver of maturity in reputation risk management, alongside, of course, having an established cross-functional risk management or risk mitigation function in the company. Jumping to limitations. So first, the sampling could be less accurate. The purposive sample could be less accurate than random sampling, and that's for two reasons. Sorry, the sampling could be less accurate for two reasons. First, purposive sampling is less accurate than probability sampling. Second, the participants are not representative of the senior PR practitioners. Solely since the sampling frame is constructed around networks formed from the MCM program or connections of these individuals. And this might have biased the participants and their responses. Another gap in the study is that the results were not rigorous enough to determine each company's actual maturity level in all reputational risk management components. And that was for two reasons. First, the questions did not include direct inquiries about their reputational risk management frameworks. And second, the participants were at different levels and different departments, different levels of operation and different departments within the organizational structure. Hence, this might have inhibited obtaining a holistic overview of the organization's reputational risk management function. And now future research areas might involve how data analytics and AI can enhance strategic reputation risk management, and best practices for course corrective actions would also be interesting to explore. Further interdisciplinary research maybe that combines communications and risk management scholars to examine the validity of the existing integrated reputational risk frameworks, and studying how reputation risk management integrates with reputation management would also, or where it fits with within the reputation management will also be very cool. Next steps for this study would be sharing my learnings via conferences and convos within my network, and perhaps publishing this research at some point. This brings me to some acknowledgements. I would like to thank my kids, Liana, Mustafa, and Elena, and their father, Ahmed, for inspiring me, and my mom and dad, Mahmoud and Aisha. I'm deeply grateful for having you by my side on this journey. My brother, Abdurrahman, my best friend, Samrina, thank you so much for being such a source of support and encouragement. And thank you so much, Jacquie Hoornweg, my supervisor. Your guidance through this journey has been invaluable, and I'm truly and deeply grateful for all your support and encouragement. Thank you, Terry, for agreeing to be my second reader. Thank you, Mark and Alex, for agreeing to chair and evaluate my defense. Finally, to my classmates, my MCM fam, for their motivation and inspiration and really support over the last few years. It's been truly wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
Great. Thank you for that excellent presentation, which I have to say I really enjoyed, on a really interesting topic. Without further ado, I will go to your supervisor to ask you the first question. Professor Hoornweg.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Eiman. And congratulations for getting through it. I know that you're struggling a little bit with a cough, and and so feel free as you're answering the questions to take as many drinks of water as you want.
Thank you,
I wanted
Jacquie.
to take you back just to start off and tell us a little bit more about your participants and give a little bit of color to that in terms of the industries they came from and also the positions. You mentioned at the end some of the limitation around of where they were in the organization. Maybe you could just give us a little bit more color about the participants of your interviews.
So the participants of my interviews were mainly from through the MCM program, as I mentioned. So I interviewed one CEO, three like five, I think five CCOs, and two senior managers and the rest were at the mid management kind of level, and one of them was from a senior risk manager. So, and the sections they came were from two were from the educational sector, and two were from multinational financial institutions, while the others kind of varied between the oil and gas and low carbon energy sector and the government sector.
Terrific. And just if you, going back to the slide where you had some of those quotes, how would you characterize some of the key themes that really came out of those interviews, sort of like the aha moments that you had when you were looking at, you know, what people were saying about this topic, and particularly, you know, that intersection between strategic risk management and operational risk management?
So a big aha moment for me was when a lot of the interviewees were mentioning um, actually practicing reputational risk management, but doing that at an ad hoc manner. And that really highlighted, and the interviews really, I got the sense that the CCO were the executor of that. It was the center of that process. There wasn't a systematic process where reputational risk was done systematically, where vulnerabilities are mapped on an ongoing basis, and then where reputation and risk were really integrated at all levels. It really, and when it was integrated at both levels, it was mostly that CCO that was informally doing that through having sessions with their staff, or maybe having conversations with their senior staffs and telling them or discussing with them maybe themes and trends or reputational risks that might be surrounding the organization. So yeah, this was a big aha moment for me, for sure.
Thanks. I'll leave it there and let Terry, I think, is second reader goes next, if I'm correct, Chair.
Yes. Thank
Floor
you.
is yours, Terry.
Thank you. Amanda, I'm going to follow up on just the group of people that you interviewed. So I kind of calculated about a 50% or half of them are in public sector, especially if they're in Canada. I'm going to count education, healthcare, and government at healthcare, and the other would be in private sector. Did you see any difference between private sector and public sector in terms of how they approach risk management and reputation management?
Well, I would say it depends. So although you could put education and the government sector at one category, it was very different. There was a huge difference actually. So one of those, it was almost to the point of extreme difference. So one of these were aspirational in their reputation risk management, where the CCO had the knowledge, the experience, but also I would say that it had a lot to do with the CCO themselves. They had a lot of knowledge, experience, and also which really allows them and gave them the leverage to persuade their institution to allow for reputational risk to be a part of their portfolio, treated as a standalone risk, not as a risk of risks, which really pushed for that maturity, right? But and on the other hand, there were other companies where some lovers were just speculating about what's happening at the strategic level, versus the first aspirational, where there was risk ownership and stewardship to the employee level, which was pretty cool to know and to discuss, honestly.
That's great. I want to talk about figure 5, your conceptual framework. And maybe, is there an easy way to pull that up? Just pull that slide up if you can.
Yes, for sure.
There, perfect. So I agree with these four perspectives, but I think there's one missing, and I think you sort of just threw it off as course correction action. I think that has to be a separate manifest stage where, you know, implementation, mitigation, correction becomes a very visible stage in the framework so that people know that they have to go through that box. And I would even put down within that, you know, organizational learning, right? So, you know, not only what are you doing to mitigate or correct, but what are you doing to learn from that before it gets back to governance?
Oh, I love that. Actually, this is the way that this during the process of forming this framework, this was the way it was set up originally. Exactly what you said, organizational learning and the course corrective action being at a separate box. So I think this is very, very important. And I think this whole process, this is where everything, the sense making that happens at the previous stages, this is where it translates to actions. So at this point, I really think that there's a lot that happens, and I would imagine that course corrective actions. First, there could be immediate actions if the first steps are done right, if the auditing is done right. And this, I would think, it would be very interesting to dig deeper and delve into how it's done and how they're measuring reputation, whether it's done the right way or not. This would be very interesting. But I think if it's done right, then of course it really allows the organization to take immediate action on places that are highlighted by the first steps. In my brain, I would see a lot of issues management, maybe negotiations, perhaps mediations. Like there's so much to this step. That's why I put it in my limitations. It was one of the most important limitations is more research on the course corrective actions. And I think it would be really, really interesting to see, to explore this, especially if reputational risks are categorized. I know we studied in crisis how crises could be categorized, and then the corresponding or the appropriate responses could be. So I think doing or replicating that for reputational risk would be very, very cool.
Good. That's all I have for now, Alex.
Very good, thank you. I will now ask Professor Hoornweg or Dr. Flynn if they have any further questions.
I think I'm good. I think my last thing, maybe, Eiman, and this is really for you to take where you want it, is you did have some recommendations. Initially, it was a longer list, and then it was shortened down, and I noticed you condensed it further in the presentation. But if you were talking to a CEO today about your study and what you found, and they were looking at to you for advice on some of the things that they should really keep top of mind in terms of the framework that you've put forward, but also thinking about some of the things that maybe the participants said about the struggles they have within their organization in terms of reputation management, or some of the things they see both in where they're called in reputation management, like where in the process, for example. Are there things that you would tell a CEO that you would like them to, really think about in setting up their processes?
Yeah, so I would really highlight the importance of the alignments between the CCO and the CEO, because one of the aha moments, or one of the stuff that I really enjoyed in my interview process, is when the participants spoke about cases where that misalignment, although some organizations, for example, would take actions that were legally sound and that were super clean, nothing was on them, but because a disconnect happened from a reputational lens, it really caused backlashes from the communities around the organization. So I would really highlight the importance of alignment between the two. I would also highlight the importance of education, because that was a huge gap that was highlighted by or emphasized by the participants. because one of the interviewees, I think, sums this very nicely. He says that it's a very it's a significant weakness for the organization to not have a capable CCO, and they need to develop them from within or hire them from outside the organization. So I think that this is a very important point. The third one would be perceptions. So it's very important for the CEO to understand the role itself and to have to know why reputation is important and what the CCO's role is in the first place.
Thank you.
So one area that I think is silent through this is the whole notion of culture, right? And to what degree an organization has a risk culture. And, you know, I was thinking I had a conversation with, he's now the former CCO of Boeing. He sits on the board of IPR with me. And Brian was talking about this notion that, you know, that it didn't matter what he did as CCO of one of the largest companies in the world. He couldn't get through to the senior leadership, who were mostly aerospace engineers, that, you know, reputation and risk go hand in hand. And when we don't think of those as two very intertwined and parallel processes, we get dysfunctionality within the workplace. So what happens when you have a CCO that can't cut through the culture, and, you know, that sees this risk lens and sees the opportunities and also the challenges, but yet those that they report to or more senior leaderships don't think it's a big deal?
Yeah, this is a very important point. And I think that the perception of the CCO themselves, and maybe sometimes advocacy even around how reputation should be a part of their portfolio, it's been really a key factor for achieving that maturity level at where that my research shows. But of course, having an overall risk management system in place also allows for that integration. And what the research says is that there's a certain maturity that the risk, I don't know if this is related to what the case of the CCO or not, but the research says that there's a certain level of maturity that the enterprise risk management itself needs to has. I think it's 5 years, and then that would allow for reputation integration within that system. But it's still, I think there's a lot on the shoulder of the CCO. It was very clear where and one of my participants really advocated for that for years to get that to happen. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Professor Hoornweg and Dr. Flynn. Now we have time, actually, so I'm happy to open the question period up to the audience.
Well, I have one question, which is you're rolling right into it, which was risk is a really interesting topic because an organization could expend unlimited resources to mitigate all risks. And so if you look at that maturity curve you're talking about, you know, someone optimizing for risk management would say, go to the end of the maturity curve. And in reality, most organizations are not all the way at the end and they haven't mitigated all risks. And I'm just curious in terms of identifying the leadership opportunity in front of communicators and others, when you were engaging with these organizations, did you get a sense of how serious risk management was being taken, to what extent organizations were willing to invest, and how far they were along on that maturity curve? I'm more just asking in general. You don't have to answer all the specifics, but you know, how serious was risk management being taken, and how robust were the risk management frameworks that were in place?
Oh, so this is a very interesting question. Unfortunately, I don't have, the research doesn't really indicate a direct answer to that, and my interviewees, we didn't delve to that. But what I can say is that when I spoke to the risk senior manager, they were really asking questions, and they were really delving into what if for example, misinformation or disinformation situation happen. So what I think is that there's a huge opportunity for prioritizing risks, and that's why models, this is where models come into play, where measuring really helps prioritize and filter what is really jeopardizing maybe the continuity of the business, right? What should we really focus on? Yeah, I think it's a very important topic, and I also have seen that reputation risk was taken more seriously at multinational institutions. It was more established, if I may say, and it was more, they were asking really questions, and they were giving insights regarding, they're already finding answers to questions that I believe that CCOs have a huge opportunity to answer, and perhaps it might be fall even under their portfolio as reputation stewards.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I have a quick question. How did you find getting participants to join the study? Did you get who you wanted, and did you was it relatively easy to get them to speak and share their thoughts?
Surprisingly, yes. I found that they were very interested once they knew who the research speaks to. They were very interested to participate and to gain the learnings afterwards, or the results afterwards. So yeah, I would say yes.
The other thing that I found interesting was that it really, the interviewees all seemed to agree that PR was a strategic management function, which is a great result to see, but not completely congruent with other studies that we've seen, where sometimes you have some skepticism about PR as a strategic function. How did you find that part of the conversation come out in your interviews?
So this is very interesting. I found that it was, although they all agreed on that, there was the varying level of empowerment. It was very different from an organization to others. So if we use edifice, the excellence level was different from an organization to another.
I see. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, I still have a couple of minutes, so happy to open it to other members of the gallery if you have any questions. Sometimes family members ask the hardest questions. Okay, hearing none. Terry, you're the owner of the meeting, so perhaps you could put everybody into a room so that our defense evaluation committee can confer.